And without further ado, speaking
Our
about
own.
our own superwoman, Tasha Young is in the building.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yes, 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 yes,
Home.
yes, 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 yes. Love your T-shirt.
My first one. I'm over the moon about it.
Yes,
I've been
yes,
wanting one for years.
So I'm going to echo what a lot of people in Westchester County have been saying over the last month. We love you. And damn, you all the way in Brooklyn now.
I know.
Yeah, but congratulations. Can you first tell us, explain, so you're in Brooklyn. Why are you in Brooklyn? The new position you have. Let's just get right into it.
Okay, all right. It's great to be here. I love you guys. I miss you so much. So I work for the New York City Council in the office of the Majority Leader, Lori A. Cumbo. So she's the first woman of color to be Majority Leader for the New York City Council. She made history along with Senator Andrea Stewart Cousins, Assembly Member Crystal Stokes, and Tish James, and Catherine Parker. So it's a Majority Leader, female-led moment in history, and I'm really grateful to be a part of that.
And you push for that, and you work hard for that.
Yes,
to make that
I
happen.
do work hard for the advancement of women. Absolutely,
yes,
absolutely.
So, real quick, and we were just talking about Brenda, and someone left a comment. So I just want to. Gail Baxter said Brenda's life partner was her secret weapon.
Wow.
He's always there to free her up while she fought for injustice. Hopefully, her enormous strength and resilience will see her through the pain and sorrow. A good friend. I will be praying for her and her family. Jesus. I had to read that because that was well put. That was from Gail Baxter to Brenda Crump. So
I want to also extend my condolences to Brenda and her family. I know she and her husband have been together a lifetime.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I saw you recently, the last 2 weeks, at the Pelham Picture House.
Yes.
And at the Mexican restaurant.
Oh, that was so good.
I heard about that.
Oh my God, that was so good. Yes.
Now you and what was the organization?
The Westchester Women's Agenda.
Now is that new? Because this is probably the first time I'm hearing about them doing something.
Actually, no, they're not new. They've been around for decades.
Okay.
And it's a conglomerate of both organizations and individuals that are members, and we push policy initiatives, definitely. Nonpartisan, but given the makeup of the body kind of determines the tone and the attitude of what policy we push. And there's some, very seasoned, founding members that we both know and love. Cheryl Brannon, has been a member of this organization for a very long time.
And a supporter of the show and the paper.
Supporter of the show, founder of Sister to Sister International, one of the founders of the Yonkers chapter of Westchester Black Women's Political Caucus. So she's a part of this group.
Shout out to Keisha Skipper.
Shout out Keisha.
Yes.
And Karen Cheeks Lomax. So I am a part of the Women of Color Collective also within the Women's Agenda. And who else is there? Allison Moore Lake from the Westchester Children's Association. So mostly not-for-profit leaders and individuals are members of this organization. And the Women of Color Collective is, gathering and strategizing on how to amplify the voices of women of color within the Women's Agenda. So Dr. Bob pulled up the logo. We just came up with this new logo, and as you can see, it's kind of, trying to be inclusive of all hues and shades.
I don't have that screen. Okay. Yeah, we can put it in the comment section. You can put a link in the comment section though.
Okay. Thank you. Right. So we thought very hard about that logo. So it's not just representative of just pink. We put some hues and some tones and some shades along that pink because you're really not doing women's issues if you're not inclusive of all women. You're just doing something different.
That's true.
So we aspire really to be more inclusive and not exclude anybody.
So 3 things. So anytime you call me to be somewhere, I'm going to be there.
Yes.
Anytime Sandy Barnaby called me to be somewhere, I'm going to be there. Anytime Nada calls me to be somewhere, and Cheryl calls me to be, when all y'all call me, it's like I got to be there. Plus, I mean, I can't let either Yusef or Mama Salam come to town and I don't go out, I don't be there for them. So I had to be, I had other things to do. Like I literally was working up until the time I left. And you saw when we went to the Mexican restaurant.
Yeah,
I couldn't even sit in the theater for part 3 and 4. I had seen the movie, I seen the documentary 2 times, but I couldn't sit there because I was so tired.
Yeah.
I would have sat in that chair, that comfortable chair,
I know.
and the lights was out. Oh, yeah, nobody would have heard the movie because I was snoring. So, it was like we went to the restaurant and it was good.
Yes.
And I got but it was good for me. I spent like an hour with her.
Wasn't that beautiful?
You know, she's been on the show before a few times.
I didn't know that.
And we've gone down to some things that she spoke at her.
Right.
And so we were familiar. We've been down, and Yusef's also been on the show a few times too.
Nice. Okay.
And then she was up here for the Raynette Turner panel discussion. Yes, candlelight thing. We had a big thing. She came out, spoke. So she came up for that. So she's definitely a friend of the show and stuff. So I couldn't let them come through.
Yeah.
This documentary. Oh, also I want to. Okay, before I be forgetting. So, speaking of documentaries and movies, I wanted to shout out Kenneth Chamberlain.
Yes.
The killing of his father has made the screen. Yes. His father is going to be played by Frankie Faison.
Yeah.
Y'all might know him from. He was the landlord in Coming to America.
Yes.
He was Pops in Luke Cage.
Yes.
He was.
Right.
He was. Burrell in The Wire.
Yes.
Commissioner Burrell. Yeah.
That town that they had. When they had quartered off the street and they allowed legal drug activity.
Right.
He was the one who was in charge of that.
Yeah. He was the commissioner. He was a commissioner then. Right. And he played a host of other things. Those are probably the 3 things most people will know him from. One of those 3 things.
That's right.
He will be playing Mr. Chamberlain.
That's right.
And the reason I brought that up, so I want to congratulate that, and he's the movie is going to be showing it in the Austin Film Festival. The Kenneth Chamberlain movie. But what I'm going to say about when I wrote the Kenneth Chamberlain, the same applies for what I'm getting ready to say about When They See Us. It was like we've had them on the show, we've talked to them, we've interviewed them, but it wasn't real on a whole nother level until you put that on the screen. Even though people have heard us talk about Kenneth Chamberlain's killing, same thing, I believe it will be real on a whole nother level when you see it on a screen. And I think and it will be ever, immortal and forever captured on screen. And I think it's a story that not only just everybody in Westchester, but every person needs to see, especially every African American needs to know about that story. And the same thing with the Central Park 5. They were wrongfully incarcerated. And excuse me, I gotta. Oprah renamed them. They are the Exonerated 5 now, so we will not call them the Central Park 5.
Oh, okay.
No. But I'm
You're
just saying
that.
Because Oprah said she renamed them the Exonerated 5. Actually, that's what Yusef's the one that said that Oprah renamed them.
Oh, I didn't know that was Oprah.
Because when we went to pick him up, me and Kenneth went to pick him up,
in
the car back, he said, we sitting on Oprah's couch. She said, now you're the Exonerated 5. She said, so he said she did. So I say all that leading into y'all had the screening and panel discussion broke up into 2 weeks, the 17th and the 24th, and part 1 and 2 was shown, and then Yusef was the keynote speaker, and then I had Lou Young, who worked for CBS and covered at the time. You had Lauren Razor, who worked for the DA's office at the time, and a few other people, and then
Ken Bright,
week 2. Week 2, you had Sharon Salome, and you had Ken Bright, and I was doing it in order, you know what I'm saying, and others. But what you said at the end, I think, was very important on the reason you did this, and what about the conversation, and I want you to, if you can remember, that's what I want you to share right now.
I mean, so may I back up to why we even
yes, please.
It? So this came out May 31st, the film,
right?
The limited series, and
Four-part docuseries.
Four-part docuseries.
Right.
And there was conversation in the Women of Color Collective of whether or not we could watch it. So several women were like, I can't watch it. It's too painful. I can't do it. And we've had conversations like this on Facebook, like, sharing things that are happening to Black people, without justice, beatings, murders, all kinds of sexual assault, everything, without any justice. And it's like, you have to kind of negotiate with yourself. Am I going to watch this again? Am I going to click on that again? So that was the conversation. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try to watch it. And I watched it, and I got through 32 minutes, and I couldn't watch it anymore until 2 weeks later. I picked up the first episode again and the second. And then I said, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I want to do something with it. So, talk to the larger part of the agenda, and I watched 3. 4 was very hard. But once I watched it, I couldn't stop watching it because I was like, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to do something with this. So it became like research, and it became like the motivation for me to try to build coalition to talk about these tough conversations. Because in my estimation, in Westchester County, we don't talk about it and we don't do anything about it enough. And I'm talking
not just Westchester County, but especially Westchester County.
Especially Westchester
Right.
County. And I know I'm preaching to fellow activists, but it's like, what are we going to do about it?
Right.
At what point are we going to say, we're not going to sit here and pretend like we're not hurting? We're not going to sit here and pretend like we're not traumatized. Even to say, I can't watch it, that's a trauma response. That's protecting yourself.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you're affected by these events in a negative way that you are like, I'm going to protect myself and I'm not going to engage. And even sometimes maybe that's why some people are frozen from activism. But the only issue with that is that everybody else is being active. Every other community is mobilizing, and they're saying, you can't treat us this way. You can't hurt us. You can't do this to our children. So we have to push through, those feelings of inactivity or inertia, or that it will just go away. So that was really the attitude around having a film screening. The other part is like really trying to bridge communities that look at the same exact thing in totally different ways.
Absolutely.
That's totally different ways.
That's so important.
We have Linda Fairstein is from Mount Vernon, I believe.
And they finally got her off the
That is
Wall of
the
Fame.
Former prosecutor.
Yeah.
She was in charge of the sex crimes unit, I believe, in Robert Morgan's
But she was one of the ones. She pushed that through.
Right.
She pushed that and put pressure
Right.
that they would be convicted.
Right. And then Elizabeth Lederer has some kind of affiliation with Westchester, and it's almost like people were able to helicopter into a community and helicopter out without really feeling what that community might be going through.
Right.
So that is part of why I think it's important that we share our pain with people who call themselves friends, who might, have people of color in their families, even if they're white. We have to say we're hurting, because if you don't say it, how would people know? If we don't speak up and say this is not okay,
Everybody just thinks you're okay.
Everybody thinks you're okay, and we'll keep going to dinners together.
But you know what? I want to say something too, and this is especially from experience. A lot of times you're taught.
That's right.
You're taught not to let them see you sweat, not
Oh
to
my
let them
God,
see
talk
your
about
pain. You walk with your head held high. You don't let
Rise
nobody
above
know
it.
that you're going through it.
Right.
And for a long time, I lived that, and
Me too.
and a lot of people did not know that I was going through some of the things I was going through. Where
That's right.
I was in a crowded room with my family, but I felt alone.
That's
like,
right.
You understand what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
but until I actually spoke on those things,
Yes.
like my family just thought I was being quiet that day. Like, just
Right.
you know,
Oh,
just,
he'll be all right.
Yeah, like nobody really knew, and but I know I'm not the only one. A lot of us are taught that. You know what I'm
That is
saying?
such a good point, because I, even in my young adult life, going through, different things that you go through, up and downs, whether it's professionally, marriages, parenting, whatever, I was told a lot of times, never let them see you sweat.
Right.
Never let them see you sweat. And it's like, we can't make ourselves vulnerable for fear of someone taking advantage or putting a label on us some kind of way.
And then we had those who have that we've trusted that have weaponized it against us. So then you're just
Talk
like, yo,
about
you
it.
know what? I'm not saying nothing. I'm not like
Talk about it.
nobody's, but that's not healthy as well.
It's not healthy. It's not. Go ahead.
And walking around white people, letting them know, thinking that we okay and we not. Then when we have outrage or something, people like, oh, what the hell they complaining about? Like, yo, what's wrong with them? Like,
who are you?
Because we don't
you're going
shit.
crazy.
We're not having those dialogues, and people don't know what we feel, and we don't get to kind of know what they feel either. So I'm just saying.
And oh my God, you just said a word. That's a whole sermon, what you just said right there. But yeah, so that never let them see you sweat. That's like a catalyst to disease. And uneasiness and really like emotional disturbance, mental illness, really, allowing that vulnerability to surface and having a safe place to discuss it with or deposit it, that's health. The keeping it in is the unhealthy.
And sometimes you have to find an outlet. Like for me, it was writing. This radio show.
Right.
Writing, period.
Yeah.
Mary J. Blige took her pain and turned it into music.
Into song.
You know what I'm saying? And,
yes.
And became an inspiration for generations
yes.
of people. You sometimes have to find that. You have to find whatever it is for you to
get it out.
To get it out, though.
To get it out.
But we need to have more conversations together, though.
And I like what you said about, like, they don't know how we're feeling, but we don't know how they're feeling.
Right.
So as we were going through this, and this is a film screening committee, so it wasn't me by myself. There was about, like, 5 core, like, down, like, 4 flat tires women.
And I was in the email.
Hell of a down. They really down.
They were down.
I was in the email chain, so I got every email that went out. Like, they was like every response.
AJ felt like he was despair.
AJ was despair. Like, I mean, we had meetings of people. It was summertime, so people were on planes, trains, and automobiles. And we were still coordinating this thing. And when we had announced that we were doing it, the second meeting we had, because we meet monthly, and this is an open organization that people can join. But one of the women was actually in the office with Morgenthau, and she's white, and she was so emotional about being a part of that office, and she was staring at me, and I was like, kind of like looking around, like, I really want to let people know having these discussions is a catalyst for growth and health. This is not an opportunity for anybody to be on a pedestal, on a pulpit, on a podium, like, yeah, you the biggest racist in town. That's not what this is about. This is about having tough discussions and tough conversations. And I put myself out there because I listen to Snoop Dogg's Ain't No Fun If My Homie Can't Have None. I listen to, who else? The 90s rappers that were very disparaging to women and really promoted rape culture. I listened to that in the 80s and 90s, and I've evolved, right? To now participating in Me Too, to now championing, resources for survivors of sex abuse, right? So, again, this is not about demonizing anybody, but it's about inviting people in to our lived experience and us into theirs, so we don't keep creating policy and practices that keep this stuff going.
Well, the people and the thing about letting people in and not hearing their side either, not being, by them not knowing our side, but us not engaging. Right. That's why we keep getting these
people in office.
They think that they're help, and they do things that they actually think that they are helping because they don't know.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And we're not.
Yes.
And until we're engaged in that conversation, you can't help change the mind without. You have to get them invested in the situation. They have to know. I mean,
Yeah.
I got people like, they really think that they're doing something, or they really think that their actions are not really racist or offensive, because they don't know. Someone told me, a white listener, Robbie Man. I don't know if he wants me to say his name, but
I could see his icon comes to mind.
He said to me something that was profound. He said that, and I hope Robbie don't mind me sharing. He said that he was moved when we did the show on Ancestry, and I was sharing the story about being 4 generations from slavery, and that I was from a town called Henderson, North Carolina, and that that probably was the name of the slave owner. He was a huge judge at the time that the town was ended up being named after, and that story moved him to, because sometimes you'd be like, why are you and David so angry? Like he said, but there's a lot that he didn't like. It affected him. You know what I'm saying? He wanted me to know that it affected him, and made him rethink some stuff. And we, again, if I had not had that, you know what? Yusef sitting right there. Phil Feiner was sitting right there, and Dr. Cavallo, the head of the independent reporter. Yusef was sitting right between them.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Yusef was telling his story. They seen it on the news, but they walked out of here in a whole nother level hearing him tell that story, and probably would have never been in a room like that before if it wasn't for the show. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, they got to hear something that they normally wouldn't hear on that level, and then when you hear his mom, one of the things, and she didn't say it there, but one of the things she spoke when she was on the show, and I'll share the link again later, when her son was wrongfully incarcerated, it was like she was in jail too. Like, she, her son, she feels like the states kidnapped her son. Like, you understand what I'm saying? Yes. And she's like, we went through his imprisonment with him. And to hear her tell that story, like, there's no way you can know the pain and the feel of what that was, you know what I'm saying, until you hear that story. Like, it moves you just to hear her tell that story. You know what I'm saying? So that's why some of the reason why you have Nas Duncan on here. She lost. Hear her talk about a mother's pain of losing that child that was lost to senseless gun violence, and the city never solving the crime. And the pain that she feels. And the thing about her, and shout out to her, she was the mother that sat with all the other mothers when their kid was lost. And then for the first time, she was actually in that chair.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? It was like, to hear her tell that story on the air, that's why I'm glad we have this venue. Like,
oh my God.
It hopefully gives you an insight and stuff that you never, and sometimes as black people, we don't know what other black people going through.
And we don't know that it's okay to say, you know what, me too.
Right.
Oh my God. That, I can say that hurt me.
Right.
You're saying that hurt you. I could actually say, I can talk about that.
Right.
And AJ, what you're saying is so profound because there's a precedent for this, right? So during the abolitionist movement, there were the slave narratives that would go to newspaper print, and people would write memoirs, and it would go out across the ocean to Europe, and it would go throughout America, and it would encourage people to be a part of the abolitionist movement because we were telling our stories, right? And then you fast forward to the turn of the century with the great suffragette Ida B. Wells. She was an investigative reporter. What was she investigating? Lynchings at the turn of the century. So after slavery, we had to go through Reconstruction, right? The Great Robbery. And then we had the Jim Crow South and the lynchings. So when she started telling those stories, that started prompting people to know about that level of suffering that we were going through. And later that led to legislation. It took decades, right? But, just like the abolishment of slavery, it took a whole war. And then there was legislation. So it's like when we tell our stories, we're able to mobilize more people, build more coalition, get more resources to really further equality and safety for all Americans. So we're standing on the shoulders of our ancestors that have done this before us, and The other thing that we wanted to do was make sure we were responsible with people's emotions. So Sandy Burnaby galvanized therapists.
Right. Yeah, for anybody who needed it. And she also walked by with a box of tissues and gave her. She said, "You're going to need this after you see this. You're going to take one now. You'll thank me later." Like she
Absolutely, you know, and that was through the Anti-Racist Alliance.
Yes.
And then the organization that Kenneth co-founded. I'm sorry, it was through the Westchester Coalition for Police Reform. That's where the therapists came from. And then the Anti-Racist Alliance, you know, people, we had co-sponsorship. I'm going to forget somebody, so forgive me in advance. But we had like about 8 different organizations that said...
Including Black Westchester.
Including Black Westchester. That said, we want to be a part of this. And people came together, and you saw the emails. You know, it was a lot of communication. But that coalition now is going to meet again for a debrief on October 21st.
That's what I wanted you to talk about, because you thought that was very important. Why?
Well, I think for a few things. So whenever you're in organizing circles or management, it's always good to hear back from people how they experience your project, right? Because that just, you know, makes you a better project manager, and it invites more people into the leadership of the initiative. So that's one reason. But the second thing, so we want people to talk back. I ran into some people last night, and they said, "Listen, I got roped into undoing racism. I'm gonna go to the next meeting next week, Friday at the I said, "Oh, okay, well, welcome." So some people that were part of this coalition of co-sponsors for the first time are gonna work with anti-racist organizers. So we want to invite them in. We want to hear from them. But really, we want to see, what are we going to do next?
And that's where...
Yeah.
Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that well, firstly, I wanted to congratulate you, take the opportunity to congratulate you and the rest of the members of the coalition for putting together this event. From our discussions, we've been friends for a while, but really our comradeship has really been strengthened over the past couple of years. And as you know, one of the themes that I harp on is the importance of extending our coalition and building our alliances beyond just a member of Black majority communities. Although there are there are things that Black people must take the lead in when it comes to our communities. When we find ourselves in municipalities, counties where we're not the majority, we have to be prepared to ally with people on a principle basis. And one of the things that excites me is that this effort sort of demonstrates that we have a small but critical size of allies in the white and other communities who have a genuine concern about our issues. And Tasha, you know, her recollection of the history of abolitionism and subsequent movements underscores the vital role that whites have played in some of those movements.
I'm gonna keep it real. Many of the groups you named are responsible for the success of Black Westchester.
Oh, beautiful.
The Anti-Racism Alliance.
Yes.
And several
Westchester
other groups.
Coalition
I mean,
for
along
Police
with the
Reform.
NAACP, along with Sister to Sister, along with other, but you know, they
put their resources.
They have a role
into
to play
free
too.
media.
Groups in Mount Vernon, like the Fleetwood Citizen Society, who were the first ones really speaking about, oh, we love Black Westchester.
Yes.
You know, make sure you're here, bring some papers. Like, I mean, you know, it takes that. And I was just with a realtor, and I met some other chiropractors and doctors, and I was in that little networking. You know, they were like, oh, we got to support you. We got to support you. We don't get enough of that from ourselves.
No.
Unfortunately, many things that if we just relied on ourselves, they would not survive.
Right.
This show is 5 years old.
Yeah.
The website is 5 years old. The paper's 2 years old. If I just depended on the support of my brothers and sisters, especially if I just depended on Mount Vernon,
very painful. To
I would not. We would not still be here. This platform would not be here. And I'm glad that we're able to reach out to, you know, Republicans to come through. You know what I'm saying? You trying to get some of the Black vote, you need to speak to the Black. You want to speak to the Black people, he's where you need to speak to them at. You know what I mean? And we're able to, you know, get a lot of people like, Sandy Barnaby and all of those people have been here.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that dialogue is very important. And
absolutely.
I'm glad that we've been, at some small point, we've played a part in the discussion.
Oh, yeah.
And creating a platform where we can have these discussions. So,
yeah.
I was going to say, too, plus, when I'm excited, because we all were aware that Kenneth was working on a biopic about his father's tragic death. And so I'm excited to hear that it's been completed, and I'm hoping that maybe once Ken and the rest of his team work out all of the logistics, that perhaps the coalition can have an opportunity to sponsor a film again and continue this discussion, because really what it would represent is a shift from focusing on anti-black police policing outside of Westchester
to
within Westchester.
Yeah.
And very obviously the case of Kenneth's father's death is just one of many that have occurred here in Westchester County that make us especially mindful of the need to have a dialogue about how we can improve policing in Westchester County, so we can reconcile and move to some other important issues. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Although I didn't get a chance to make it, Tasha, I AJ must have explained why I was absent 2 weeks in a row. I did intend on coming, but
my head was probably spinning when he was doing that, so maybe it didn't
all
land.
Right, you didn't miss me. It's all right, Tasha. I got you.
I just want to.
I just put it back on straight, actually.
And I just want to also say, and I can't say this enough, I give Kenneth Chamberlain all the credit in the world.
Oh my God.
The police killed his father for showing up for a medical call, medical assistance call to help to assist him. He walks the streets and still sees many of these officers, and he is not on some, excuse my language, fuck the police tip.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like you almost couldn't fault him if he had that kind of mentality right now. Like all police. You know what I'm saying? But what does he do? He co-founds the Westchester Coalition for Police Reform and speaks that all of these things dealing with better police community relations.
Talk about it.
I've been with him in Yonkers. I've been with him in White Plains, Greenberg, with the NAACP. I've been with him, because Damon is often asked to speak at those things too.
Yeah.
And I've been with him at many of these things, and there's no police commissioner, chief, or police department that he won't engage and have dialogue on how they can have better relationship with the community. Like, I would love, as good as I think I am as a person, I would love to believe that I would have, I hope never have to find out. Right. But that I would be able to step up and the strength of character to do like he's doing. And I just got to keep it real. Like, that is not too, like, you cannot take that for granted. You cannot take, he could be on some real, like, taking out cop stuff. I mean, let's keep it real. Like, the cops killed his father.
Right.
And nobody has gone to jail.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Plus, as Americans try to grapple with the history of racial conflict here in the United States, we must be more honest, especially people in, outside of the black community, Latino community that have not been subject to this very heavy policing. We have to be honest about the excesses of policing policies here in the United States and how they contribute to a lot of civil strife and tension that we're experiencing today. And unfortunately, if there is one benefit that might possibly come from Mr. Chamberlain Sr.'s tragic life, it might be to sort of highlight to everyone one instance where policing can go awry, and to really think about what is the impact, because you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It takes a superhuman being not to be deeply embittered and to harbor resentments when you take the life of someone that they love. And we might in this particular case, I don't understand because I am familiar with the circumstances. But even if it was totally inadvertent, listen, you've still taken someone's life. You've taken the life of someone that I love, irrespective of your intentions or not.
They talk about Obama and the drone strikes and that he was going to create the next generation of terrorists that would hate this country because their village or their parents were blown up. What do you think
is happening
the,
to
the,
us?
the generation of children,
That's right.
black children
That's right.
here, are dealing with when their friends, their cousins, their fathers,
Yeah, they're everybody's.
They're everybody's. Their classmates.
They just
are
arrested
just
a
being
6-year-old
killed.
girl
Right.
and put her in handcuffs and in the back of a police car because she had a temper tantrum at school in the first grade.
And then we have racial disparity, like the chick who played the prosecutor and the was the
When They See Us?
No, the chick who played her just got arrested for 14 days.
Oh God, Felicity Hoffman.
Yeah, she got
for cheating.
She was the prosecutor, Linda Fair
She
or
played
whatever.
Fairstein.
She played that woman, Linda
Fairstein.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and she got 14 days for spending over $15,000 for buying her daughter's way into school.
Yeah.
And a homeless woman, I believe she was homeless. I don't mean misspoke.
Yeah.
Got 5 years for using
the
someone
address
else's address
to
so her
send her
kid
kids to
could go
school.
to school.
Yeah.
She got 5 years.
Yeah,
There's no justice in that.
that's right.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? And until we can sit here and have this conversation,
Yeah.
open and honest,
Right.
people won't know. I always
That's
said
right.
one of the things that inspired Black Westchester to change the narrative of how we're seen somewhat, because some people, they don't see us day to day. They see the music videos,
Right.
they see the news.
Right.
We're portrayed as thugs and
That's
all this other stuff.
And the women are portrayed as
hoes and bitches
hypersexualized
and all these other
hoes.
things.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And this is their whole interaction.
Even our little girls are hypersexualized.
Right. And the black men are like, they look like the Incredible Hulk. Like,
Yeah.
what's the dude from Ferguson that got killed?
Mike Brown.
Mike Brown looked like the Incredible Hulk to that cop. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like, and shot him in the back. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, how he
Yeah.
was endangered like that. But
Yeah.
but I'm just like, our color is weaponized. And,
Our skin is
and
weaponized. Yeah, so
And-
we're
and
always guilty.
We're always guilty. And that nothing's going to change
Right.
until
we
we
change
change
it.
that conversation.
Right.
Just we change. I mean, you have to break down the systems that this country was
Yes.
born. This country was built on. The country's original sin was slavery.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying?
Genocide
Taking
and then
people.
slavery, yeah.
I'm sorry. The original
yeah.
sin
Yeah.
was stealing the country from the
Right.
from the Native Americans and killing them off.
Yeah.
The second sin
Yeah.
was
Enslavement
then
of
taking
Africans.
enslaving all Africans and
Yeah.
people of color
Yeah.
in this country,
Yeah.
and the country still. There are people that like, oh, so that was some years ago. I mean, I ain't had no slaves. My father had no slaves.
Yeah, I didn't do it.
So why should I have to? Why y'all can't just let it go? Like they can't see that there's a residual effect,
Well,
and
no.
since their families built wealth on the back of that,
Yeah. That they benefit
generational
from.
wealth.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? That we
Right.
don't have. There is a big disparity in this country.
It's a
and
tremendous.
until we have those conversations, but
Yeah.
not just here, out and about.
In the policy making room, right?
Right.
So I just want to define racism for this conversation, and this is not my definition, it's Candida Brooks Harris's definition. It's laws, practices, and policy that affect, one race negatively and another race positively. So that takes the individualism of it all away, because you'll have a lot of people saying, oh, well, slavery, I wasn't even alive. That was like however many years ago. So that doesn't affect me. But if you look at the policies, practices, and laws that affect Black people negatively and favor white people, and every hue in between falls in there somewhere, then it takes it away from that individual. So
even police practices in a black city like Mount Vernon, the way they Raynette Turner as a white woman would have been given a death appearance ticket and would never have died in jail.
That's right.
for $20 worth of crab legs.
Mm-hmm.
When they giving death tickets to rich white kids for
Yeah.
trunk full of drugs.
That's right.
You understand what I'm saying?
That's right.
And a former police officer, off the record, said that that was the problem.
We
just
know.
the policing, and it's just and it's not just white. It's the policing culture.
Yeah.
The culture of the politics we're built on in the
Yeah.
system in this country.
Mm-hmm.
All of that plays a part.
Mm-hmm. Laws, practices, and policy, that keep having negative impact on people of color and keep benefiting white people. That's how we're going to define racism. So when we get together on the 21st, and I also want to say the Women's Agenda.
21st, say that again.
October 21st, 7 p.m. at Westpac.
Okay, 777?
7 p.m., 177 Terrytown Road,
177.
White Plains, New York, the Westpac building, 7 to 9 p.m. And we're going to debrief. We're going to, so I also want to say the agenda focuses on women and children, right? Women's and children's issues. And even when we decided to do this, they were like, I know this is about black men, but what about the women? And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, let's talk about the women. Let's talk about the moms. Let's talk about all the family members that went through this with these.
That's why it was good to have his mother there.
God really just kind of shaped this all. And let's talk about the women that continue to be raped. One was murdered by the real rapist because the focus. He raped a few women and killed one.
Right.
And I mean brutally. When Miss Salam was describing this man's crimes, he had raped his mother repeatedly to practice.
Yeah,
Matthias Reyes.
That actually blew my mind.
That blew my
mind. That was a fact
mind.
that I actually did not know.
Right, and then she would talk
I
about.
never heard anything. This is the first time I've ever heard of.
Miss Salam told us this story. That's why people should really
just
come.
Period.
I never. Yeah, right. Exactly.
Anyone raping their own parent, but
so heinous, and gouging women's eyes out. He also did that, and hogtied them after he would brutalize them by raping them, and because the DNA, they didn't continue looking for DNA. They didn't continue investigating once they had these 5. So he was able to go and commit more crimes. So if you want to really talk about women's issues, again, you got to be inclusive of all women. You got to be inclusive of black mothers. You got to be inclusive of brown women, Native American women. So, again, I invite people to expand their notion of feminism.
And then also the way women are incarcerated as opposed to the way men are incarcerated. We've actually dealt with that a few times. I got a video I've got to share. I'll share it later. A young lady who's been incarcerated, but she's part of one of the organizations that talk about women's rights in prison.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because there's men who make these rules and don't understand what women need. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So coming to the close of the show,
yeah.
give the website.
Oh my gosh, look at this.
Give the website again for the organization that put it together.
Yes.
Any social media that you have that you want people to follow you if they want to get in touch with you.
Okay.
And all that good
Wait,
stuff.
this is a lot. Okay, so it's the Westchester Women's Agenda. Dr. Bob, could you read that?
It's the Westchester Women's Agenda, and the web address is https, and it's just www agenda. There's no dot. I mean, it's www agenda. So it's Westchester Women's Agenda, www.agenda.org.
Okay.
And you can find out how to join on that website. And then on the 21st, so my social medias, I'm not on Facebook, so I just have my Instagram page is Tashi, Tashyon, Tashion, because I couldn't get Tasha and I couldn't get Tasha Young, so I had to kind of play around with it a little bit. So there's a few things going on. I got to talk about the 400th year commemoration of Africans in America.
Yes.
And now that this has come up, there are several African burial sites in Westchester. There's one in Irvington, and there's organizing around a statue or some kind of something to commemorate that Africans were here in the 1800s. Madam C.J. Walker's house is in Irvington, so we've always been here. We've always been here in Westchester. We didn't come
Harriet
up.
Tubman's property is.
Harriet Tubman's property is in Auburn, New York. So, yes, there was a great migration after World War II, but we were also here way before World War II. And it's funny, when I had driven, and I'll be quick, driven past Madam C.J. Walker's house with a friend, he was like, oh, well, then that means there were black people here. Because black people didn't just, put up houses where there wasn't other black people. And I said, you know what, you're right. So then in Mamaroneck, there's a burial ground. Pelham has a record of enslaved Africans in Pelham.
I would like to.
Yeah.
I'd like to I'd like to see that.
We have to. So what?
We need to, as a group, we need
Yeah.
to, take a field trip and
we
should have
gotta
it.
do it. Go ahead.
Tyreen Wright, Dr. Tyreen Wright, who is a good friend of mine and brother Jeff Monroe's, who, under the direction of Dr. Spruill, when she was still a high school student here in Mount Vernon, had done a lot of research.
So you gotta get them connected with Keisha
call.
Skipper.
Mm-hmm.
And
Keisha's a good friend of the show.
yeah,
Yes.
and the Westchester Historical Society, because what they're trying to do, there's already a display. Oh God, I want to say in Rye, of different presence of Africans.
And one of the African American burials cemeteries has been desecrated several times. They were.
Well, there's
recently.
property in Scarsdale where they were about to bulldoze because the owner said we could do what we want, and a few white people stood in front of a bulldozer. So we need to have these conversations again between these communities so we could know.
Charles Stern has a white guy has a show called Red Blue Talk. He's a friend of the show. He said, "Where were the slaves in Pelham?"
Tell him I'll get back to him. Dominique, if we could tag Dominique. Claire, tag her, Dominique Claire Shubanova. She'll answer him because she's the one who told me, and she was a Pelhamite. So Pelham, Mamaroneck, Irvington, I believe maybe Rye, and I'm sure we could find some in Southern Westchester. But the point is that black people have been in Westchester County for as long as everybody else. So this is not, by happenstance that we're finding these burial grounds, and hopefully we can coalesce and get some resources together and have an exhibit that's permanent that commemorates our presence here.
I just want to say in closing, we also need to, before we inform others and educate the youth, us as a collective, we need to have a field trip and go visit some of these places ourselves, so we're more informed on what's going on.
Let's do it.
And we
Maybe
can share. Then
spring.
we can maybe do something where we then work on with My Brother's Keeper or some of them organizations. Then have trips for the youth, but. Our generation need to know what the hell.
Absolutely. And once you get something landmarked as a historical landmark, there should be resources to do something with that.
Well, Tasha, I know you're in Brooklyn. You know this is your home. I don't want to.
Always a Westchester girl.
No, this show is your home.
Yes.
You could anytime, you got any issue, you definitely always welcome. You just let me know you want to come. I thank you for what you did for that panel discussion. I would like to see more. I think what Bob said was great, that we should approach Kenneth Chamberlain and whenever that's ready and do the same thing for his father's movie.
Done.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We need to do that, and we
I
need
don't know
to
if the agenda will do it, but I'll do it with whoever.
Right.
Will let
We
me
need
do
to,
it.
and it seemed like a decent relationship with the Pelham Picture House. I mean, they were.
Oh my
very
God, they were
receptive.
amazing!
They were
Shout
very
out to
receptive.
Laura DeBuise, and Clay. Shout out to them.
Yes, and they were definitely receptive. So even if like you said, the agenda, we got to do whatever Black Westchester can do to help put forth that and sponsor it too. We will. Closing words, Bob.
Well, see everyone next week. It was a pleasure being on air with you guys.
Closing words, Tasha.
Hold on.
God bless you. Good night. Keep loving each other and keep telling your stories. The future depends on us. We are the ancestors of the future.
Aha. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank everybody for their comments. I wasn't able to give everybody a shout out. Thank you, everybody who tuned in. For the first part of the show, I'm definitely going to break the show up. The first part, for those who just want to see the candidate, There will be a separate post on Black Westchester, and this conversation alone will be broke up. You can watch the whole show, but we'll break this up so you can just watch this conversation and share it with everybody. Shout out to Aleda. She was here the other week. She said field trip, yes, agreed. She's definitely down for that. Yes. Let's see if there was any comments that were noteworthy. Shout out to Donna Nolan and their family. They just had the golf outing for the memory for the foundation for her son. I heard that was well received. Shout out to Crystal Collins, Teray Woodson Samuel. We call each other cousins because we got Woodson in his name, so that's my cousin. We probably in no relation, but yo, that's my cousin. He said people walk up to him and be like, "Hey, Black Westchester." He said, "No, that's my cousin." Lee Carolyn Brown, Cheryl Blue. Oh, and Jamie Pessett, Mark Stuckey, Paul Anthony Cuesta, Gail Baxter, Sabrina Gray, Tony Robinson. Hey, cousin. Omi Medina, Karen Cole. Hey, cousin. Warren G. I'm sure it's not the Warren G.
Kevin Holt.
Kevin Holt. John Help Me Rivera. Pat English, Strong Ireland, what's up? Kenneth Chamberlain Jr., Herbert Washington, Atlanta, and everybody else. Anybody's name I forgot? Mark Stuckey that I didn't get. Daniel Terry, Sugar Ray, what's up, Sugar Ray?
Matumbo Muhammad,
Big Viv, Vivian Spady.
Hi Vivian, hi Crystal.
Crystal, I think I said. Jacqueline Johnson, Aunt Jackie, how are you? Brian Johnson's mother.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
got you.
Yeah, how are you? Good to see that you tuned in. Also, shout out to Shanice. She just celebrated her birthday.
Happy
belated happy birthday,
to
Shanice.
And I believe it was Melissa
Thomas. Happy
birthday as well.
birthday
Yes,
to
Melissa.
you.
And there was a few other people who just had birthdays recently. I've told all of y'all happy birthday on Facebook. Happy birthday to you all. Yo. But anyway, you could be doing anything right now and you decide to ride with us and we greatly appreciate it. Again, the October 15th 2019 issue is the last issue before the election. The next issue will come out November 15th, which will be after the election. So if you're advertising and you're running and you're advertising for this election, you need to get your artwork and payment in this Friday, by this Friday, to get into this issue. And do not wait till the last minute, first come, first serve. Please get that in as soon as possible. You know how to reach us, blackwestchester@gmail.com. Thank you for Priscilla Ichi. Shout out to her.
Hi, Priscilla, looking beautiful.
This issue that I've gotten so many compliments on, Priscilla wrote half of this issue.
She's
This
amazing.
music issue would not have come out without Priscilla.
Oh, this one? Oh,
The
I'm
music
not on this
issue.
camera anymore.
Yeah. This issue.
Yes, that one.
Yes, Priscilla wrote half of that issue. So shout out to Priscilla Ichi. Thank you everybody else who tuned in. Aleda said we are all related. Ha ha ha. Great to listen to you, Tasha. Aleda said great to listen to you.
Thank you.
This is BlackWestchester.com presents the People Before Politics radio show every Sunday 6 to 8 on InTheMixRadio.com. You could be doing anything, but you decide to ride with us, and we greatly appreciate it. Also, we have 30-second spots for all the candidates. We have 6 spots in each show. If you are interested in your 30-second commercial being on in the month of October up to the election, please hit us at blackwestchester@gmail.com. Shout out to In The Mix Radio for having this site and for allowing us to do what we do. Until next week, peace.
22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim. of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare. We haven't benefited from America's democracy. We've only suffered from America's hypocrisy. And the generation that's coming up now can see it and are not afraid to say it. 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 And are not afraid to say it.